Beth Knott if you can hear me. Okay. I'm going to count to like 5, and then I'll just tell you to go. Stand by. And go.
Welcome to True Talks Live. This is usually a live stream talk show series to provide new perspectives for project management. Tonight, it's a little bit different because we ran into a little bit of technical difficulty, but we're still able to bring you the show on demand. This show is co-sponsored by PMI Southern Maryland and PMI WDC. It was conceived and is produced by the one and only Harry Zolkauer as an entertaining and informative format to provide new perspectives and also PDUs to project managers. My name is Beth May, and I am your MC for tonight. Please note that tonight's show is being recorded and will be available later on YouTube. Our topic for tonight is artificial intelligence and project management, the dawn of a new era. This is an especially interesting topic to me because I began my career as a software engineer in what was then, almost 40 years ago, IBM's AI Technology Center of Excellence in Gaithersburg, Maryland. Back then, we were working on a variety of AI projects that included research and application development for government and commercial customers. Excuse me. We were using machine learning and knowledge-based systems, and we even developed our own object-based language for developing rule-based applications. IBM sold that capability as a commercial software product offering. It was called the Integrated Reasoning Shell. This was well before the advent of C++ and the more advanced object-oriented languages we have today. Since then, some things haven't changed much, and others have changed a lot. For one thing, AI is much more of a household word now than it was then, even though Isaac Asimov wrote about it as far back as 1942. It is also more accessible than ever, which is both a blessing and a curse, because there are practical issues. Should I believe ChatGPT's answer to my question? And ethical questions. Is my resume filtering application biased because it was trained on too narrow a spectrum of candidates? And would using this code snippet or image from ChatGPT violate a copyright or license agreement? There's also the question of whether AI is taking away jobs or just shifting the skill sets needed in the jobs of the future. Could this be a factor in why AI tools and techniques are not being adopted more quickly for project management? And then, of course, there's the everlasting question of whether AI will someday take over the world. Let me just say that having worked in the industry, I'm not worried. The mere topic of AI provides fertile ground for interesting conversations across a spectrum of issues and opportunities, and I'm looking forward to hearing tonight's conversation. Before we get started, I'd like to acknowledge our producer, Dan Stay. Dan is the man behind the camera, so to speak, making show business magic. Dan is also usually monitoring the YouTube chat, and that is the pitfall of using a script because tonight there will not be a YouTube chat. Our True Talks host is none other than Kendall Lott. Kendall is the current president of PMI WDC, and he is the CEO and president of Empowered Strategies. He is also the host of the podcast PM Point of View and co-founder and chairman of the board for the nonprofit Project Management for Change. Kendall has hosted this show since its inception 2 years ago. He has one very special guest tonight, Paul Boudreau. Paul Boudreau, BA, MBA, PMP, is a highly respected project management professional with more than 35 years of experience in the technology industry. Paul is a college professor in Ottawa, Canada, where he teaches in the project management program. He also teaches a course on using AI in project management to students at the Skirma School of Business in France. Paul is a global leader in researching and applying AI concepts to project management, focusing on machine learning, natural language processing, and genetic algorithms. He is obsessed with finding ways to dramatically improve project performance and has written 3 books about using AI for project management. In addition, he is a well-known speaker who presents compelling arguments as to why AI technology will become essential to how we deliver successful projects. Kendall, over to you.
Hello there, and good evening, everyone, or whenever you're watching this on your own time. I can't believe it. It's like, wow, I wonder what topic we should have. Back on AI again, and in the same month on PM True Talks here. But this is a special episode, the one guest edition. Right? We only have one instead of our 2 normal guests, our normal rhythm of having 2 guests. Also, this is the one that we had to record live in front of a production audience, rather instead of being live on YouTube. But you know what? That stuff happens, and everybody still gets to learn, and everybody still gets their PDUs, and everybody gets to find a new contact and a new set of information. So I think that's going to be important. Of course, the other thing we could do is just have ChatGPT write us up some questions and see what happens there. Beth, you can get on that while I'm talking with Mr. Boudreau.
Sure.
But today, actually, we move past ChatGPT into actual AI tools, right? And its role in the new area with PMs. That's what I heard that Harry was so interested in making sure we got to is moving on past some of what we heard before. So AI is more than a language prediction system based on data. It's actually about analysis. And that's what we heard, and we will continue to hear some more about tonight. Our guest theme, and essentially our theme, as the Southern Maryland chapter and PMI DC presenting to you, is that it's AI is not a case of tools for the future, but kind of, hello, dudes, it's like AI tools for now, right? So, of course, if you believe PMs play a key role in kind of being in the middle, the intermediary between the value proposition proposed by executives when they say we need a project and the actual skilled humans that actually do the projects. If you believe we're in that role, our real abiding question is, will the PM role be disintermediated? Blah, blah, blah. That's fancy speak, and I can't even get it out of my mouth, right? Because what we're really saying here, if these tools are already here, what is the role of PMs in the future? Do we even have jobs? And more importantly, if so, what makes us think so? So you've heard Paul's bio. Professor Paul, he's the guy that's been in this AI space, not just to talk about it as a fad or what's new, but to see its role in changing project management. And that's our question tonight is, how will we be different? Paul, come on in. There you are. How are you, sir?
Hi, doing great. Thank you.
Well, excellent. So you've told me the story in our pre-brief here about how you found your path through the act of being an author and how it built on itself and how you even got to that role. So tell us what got you thinking and down this role of AI, because I think it's informative to our purposes tonight, which is its role with project management. Go ahead and give us your journey a little bit there.
Journey. Well, I'd like to thank Beth for that amazing introduction. Wow. Makes me sound really important. So I've managed projects for many years. I've been involved in project management. I've been involved in teaching, but really I love new technology. I love new technology, and I have a bit of a software background. Not great, but a bit of a software background. So when I started researching and getting involved and looking at all of the things that AI could do, I thought, well, why can't we apply this to project management? Because listen, project success rate is between 30 and 40%. It's scary. How can we continue as project managers with that kind of a success rate? So I thought, well, look, are there not areas? Is there not something we can do in project management to take advantage of this amazing opportunity, this amazing new technology that's being used in all sorts of other fields? It's being used in the field of medicine. It's being used, of course, in Netflix and Amazon to sell you products. But how can we redirect that and get some value out of it in project management? So it was just my agency saying, let's do something differently. Let's get this done.
You know, when we talked before, I think one of the areas that I've always thought so important for project managers once you have the tools down is that what we're really are future seers, right? We're trying to guess the future, which means we're looking at risk. And it seems to me that the entry point to this is probably around risk management. Is that how you were seeing it?
I see AI as disruptive everywhere. I think the entire project methodology needs to be changed. So what we've done, we've gone from this stage of saying, okay, here's the project methodology, here's the process. If you follow all of these process steps, you'll have a successful project. The answer is no. Because 40% project success rate, projects over $100 million, 2% success rate, 2%
Let's make sure we got that.
schedule.
Projects over $100 million, they have a 2% success rate?
2% success in delivering the scope, the budget, and the schedule. This is based on a study done by Oxford University of 258 projects. So we need to do something differently. So risk management, absolutely. Absolutely. And you know, people keep saying it's in the future, but it's not. And I do want to talk about some of the work that I've done with organizations, but I want to talk about the capability that's out there now from vendors, for example. You talked about risk. There's a software company called Nplan, and they are specifically applying AI to project management. And if you think this is new, or maybe they're not doing so well, Google 2 years ago gave them $18 million from the Google Venture Fund to look at how to make risk management better in projects. So it's out there. They're using it. They're working with organizations now. And there's other tools. There's a tool in Europe that does resource allocation for managing multiple resources across projects. Typically, this occurs in the Defense Department, where you have a lot of contractors, but they have 4,000 licenses, 4,000 workers working in the industry, and they're using AI capability to make that resource allocation the most optimal to get the value, the best value and results out of those projects. And the last one I want to mention is, well, this won't be the last one because I have another one. Australia. I have a good friend in Australia who's an amazing programmer, and they're working with the Australian government for infrastructure projects, construction projects. And what they do is they give you a warning using AI tools on your project schedule and budget. They give you a warning 30% ahead of when a human would realize that this project is running into trouble. The last one is a tool that I created. So I created a neural network. Like I say, I've had a bit of a software background. I wanted to test and see how this works. So I created my own tool, like a predictor tool, and I can predict all sorts of things. I can predict whether stakeholders are going to be an issue on your project. I can predict whether your communication plan is it going to be effective or not. And I can predict if risks are going to be an issue on your project. And I use this for education and training purposes. But I've had a number of organizations ask me for an account, and they're using it. So they're finding a simple tool that's a simple machine learning tool that predicts the probability of a certain issue based on the data program.
Well, I'm interested in some of how you got into this to begin with. We've undersold you here a little bit. You were writing, you wrote a book, Applying Artificial Intelligence to Project Management, in 2019. You weren't waiting for November of last year. You were on top of this in 2019. And when I was talking to you, you mentioned that you wrote the book and that immediately triggered you to grab a chapter and write the next book in 2020. So this is around the value question. Take me there on the second book, how the Project Management Office, which is an organizational structure, right, can use AI to improve the bottom line. So let's talk about it from a PMO perspective for just a second before we move on to the next book. What was it happening in 2020? What's the crux of the problem there that you were observing?
Well, I was dealing with some organizations which had a lot of
hold it. I just lost you there. You were dealing with some organizations that had a lot of what?
A lot of interest in
Gotcha.
AI and project management.
Yeah.
And so I was doing presentations to organizations based on the content of the first book. The first book was basically about how project managers can use AI. And out of a chapter from there, I started talking about PMOs. And the PMOs came from these organizations. I had a presentation to an organization in Europe, again in Europe, multinational organization. They like drills and industrial microwaves and backhoes. And they had 26 project management offices around the world.
Wow.
And so they, from discussing AI with and talking with other organizations, they realized that maybe an upper level and take up a level to project office organization level is mainly discuss value. Now let's focus on the value you get AI. And because I also think that the PMO, they have a responsibility here. I think they have a responsibility because often, depending on your type of project management office, they kind of control. They control the processes. Here's what you should be doing. And I think when AI comes in, they should be doing more than controlling the processes. They should be managing the data. So how much data do I have? Where is my project data? And how do I feed this project historical data to my AI tools? The project managers out there working on several different projects, I don't think they can manage that. It's certainly not the AI department. So I'm hoping that the PA can see a responsibility there.
Well, before I get on then to where you went on further with that in your third book, let's dig in a little bit on that, because we're talking about how a PM can use this generally, and then you saw it from an organizational perspective. What I'd like here, let's get to the things that are important. Let's talk about indicators. Like, that's one example around. We're experiencing it as this chat function, right? But the real issue is its ability to do some analysis or some other characteristics, I think, that are so important. And I think that's what you've been discovering and get to teach about. What are some of the important areas that we're seeing it work in? I'm seeing indicators, massive amounts of data that it can deal with. Where can
signals.
We see these things? Or signals. Talk to me.
Signals. So you can see a signal that your schedule is starting to go off track. You can see a signal that your budget is starting to go off track. You can see a signal that your risk responses aren't as effective as they're supposed to be. And we see these signals. We don't need a massive amount of data. Depends what type of machine learning you're using. In a model called supervised learning, and yes, you need a certain amount of, if you're in the medical field, yes, I would ask for a lot of data. But in business, there are who say that 50 to 60 data sets, that would be 50 to 60 projects, may be enough to give you these signals based on correlating the model and then looking at your new project that you're working on.
Are you seeing it better at the analysis of, you mentioned it as if your risk plan is working? I had a sense that I want to use it for forecasting, or is that where we need to leave the human judgment? Is it better at remembering, or better at predicting, or better at forecasting? And do you separate that, or is it better at all of it, or none of it? I'm thinking of here's where I'm coming from on this. Project managers exist in a point in time, and they're looking forward into the future. And so it's all about the adjustment, right? Because they've got skilled people working with them to figure out what needs to be done. That's not the problem most of the time, right? It's what needs to be done in the face of things changing around us and things we don't control.
So let me talk about it this way. If I don't answer your question, ask it again. So first thing we need to address is that we know that computers are faster at making, at calculations than a human brain. We know that computers have more memory than a human brain. What AI has done is it's added logic. Because what AI does now is can help you make a decision. And I'll explain to you the things I explain with my predictor tool is you want to understand as the project is progressing, right? What's the right decision to make? And in my first book, I use this analogy. The analogy is you're in a video game called Project Manager. And this is your project, a long hallway in front of you. You turn to the door. You turn to the door on your right. You put your hand in that doorknob. The predictor tool says, whoa, don't open that door. So you go, oh, okay. Step back. Take 3 steps down the hall. Put your hand on a door to the left. Predictor tool says you have your probability of success is just increased to 97%. So now what we have is an AI-based tool that's helping and supporting a project manager make good decisions as the project is progressing. And part of that is that forecasting aspect that you were talking about.
So if we're tackling that, then you're seeing it as classifying risk and you're looking at it as forecasting. Where else have you seen it being a value? I'm trying to think of the breadth. We could have a risk manager and say, you get to use the tool. Where's the PM going to get to use the tool? Are you seeing any other breadth of use beyond that forecasting that way?
Yeah, I think project managers have to collaborate with AI tools. There's a number of different techniques. The one is a probability. The other tool is classification, as you talked about. And so what you can do is classify risks, for example, and you can classify the complexity tasks. This is something I have an algorithm for on my laptop right now. So you take all the tasks in a project. Maybe there are 200 tasks. And you classify them, which just means you group them. You put them in groups. So now you have maybe 3 or 4 groups. You look at a group, and it's a group of high complexity tasks. As a project manager, let's say 80% of your tasks are classified as high complexity. Well, what I want to do is I want to look at my resources. Do they have the capability and knowledge to handle those high complexity tasks? Do I need to bring in a coach? Do I need to bring in a mentor? Do I need to add more training? That's the kind of opportunity that project managers have. Same thing with risks. Let's classify risks. Now you have groupings of risks, maybe 3 or 4 different classifications or 5 for all of the 300 risks on the project. And what you have now is you can take those groupings. Maybe they have a common cause. Maybe there's an optimal mitigation strategy for one of those groups. So now do you see how we're collaborating? The project manager is kind of collaborating with AI. Use AI as a tool to be creative and use it as an opportunity to improve the way that you manage projects.
There I hear you seeing the forest and not all the subtrees. Like we can clump things together and see whole groups of things that can be addressed. And this tool helps us get there.
Yes.
Yeah. So I'm still thinking then, moving forward with this, about the role. You mentioned the collaboration. How are PMs going to learn to collaborate here? Is this a function of taking classes? You're saying what this hinges on is the ability to work together to improve the odds of success, which we need to get back to success versus value in just a second. But right now, let's ask the question, what's it going to take to collaborate? How do we learn to collaborate? You said PMs need to learn. How?
Yes. Not so much how, it's what do PMs need to know? So this question I get asked a lot. And you know what? I've seen other people, other presenters, and they have their opinions, and there's a lot of, I don't want to say miscommunication and misinformation out there. This is called True Talks, isn't it? So I'm going to tell you the actual truth. The answer is, what project managers need to know is, first of all, they need to know a little bit more about math and statistics. Because machine learning is based on regression analysis. You know, linear regression, logistic regression. Anyone who took calculus in school, whether you liked it, good for you. If you didn't like it, it's back again. Okay, so math and statistics. What is a probability of 75% mean? What do you do? What's an outlier? Do you have data that's an outlier? Can you ignore it? Or is it the beginning of a trend? So you have to know a little bit more about math and statistics. The second thing project managers are going to need to know is data management. We talked about some of these tools require 50 data sets, 60 data sets. The more data, the better, probably. Some tools don't require that much data at all, such as the classification techniques for risks and task complexity. But somebody has to manage data. And I don't think it's going to be a data scientist because, number one, they're hard to find and they make way too much money. Second is the IT group. Well, your information technology specialist doesn't know about project management. You've got 4 data fields. Do they mean the same thing? Can you take an average, or can you eliminate them, or can you take 2 of them? And guess what's going to happen as project managers become better at data management? Now they'll become, instead of hiring a data scientist to help you out, you will now have a project manager who has a bit of that data science capability. And I think those project managers that learn more about data management are going to be valuable to the organization. Look, data scientists make a fortune. But if you as a project manager can do some of that work, aren't you more valuable to your organization? And the third thing I have to know about is change management, because with these tools, we're changing the methodology. We're changing the way projects are going to be managed. It's not going to be easy for the project team to jump in and do this. It may not be easy for your stakeholders to understand what you're doing. And really, this collaboration, project managers need to embrace AI technology for the opportunity it can give you to be more successful. So
you seem to be implying what you seem to be
ahead.
implying, actually, as I'm reflecting on what you're saying here, is that this is about improving the quality of the project, its ability to hit its budget, its scope, its engagement, its ability to have uptake, because we did the change management part. So it's a number of things. That's inherently the stakeholder engagement there. Is this going to help us do it any faster? Are we going to be better at producing projects and getting to outcomes from them?
So I think the answer is yes, but I think the first step is to be more successful. I mean, who wants to be a project manager in a project that fails? I want to be a project manager that I deliver the scope, I deliver the project on time and on budget, and then I move on to the next project. And what do I have? I have a pathway, I have a trail of successful projects behind me. Now, can I make the project more efficient and deliver it faster? Then I think so. Because there's the learning curve theory. And the learning curve theory says that, you can learn from previous projects. So the methodology that you use to deliver that successful project, you can start applying to other projects. And I think this is important for organizations as well. One of the opportunities in project management is AI is a very flexible tool, flexible capability. And rather than have like a ChatGPT that you ask it questions and it comes back and gives you a generic answer, organizations can focus on their own organization to give them the answer to what's the best way to do this project. What we now have, instead of a generic process to complete projects, we now have a customizable technology that can help us complete projects based on the project type, the project organization, the goals and the objectives of that organization.
That's a demand on creativity.
Sorry?
I said that's a demand on creativity to do that.
Yeah, you know what? I always think that, when I talk to people, I show a picture of a wrench or something, and I say, AI has so much capability, so flexible. As project managers, if you have some creativity, you can find new ways to deliver the project. You can find new ways to improve project performance.
You said something earlier to me that I thought was radical and challenging. And I think it's something of getting in the bucket of, so what do PMs bring to the game here? You just said that part of it is that they need to collaborate with it. And there's some things they might want to learn to be able to do that. It struck me that you just talked to essentially creativity. What it is the ability to adapt and to think about how we're addressing things using this tool, and also what that implies for the projects. You talked about the learning curve theory, this idea that because I know how it worked, I can do better. So the AI will support that. And I don't think we got into why that is, but I think it's because it can plow through all the historical data, is my guess.
Yeah.
Which takes me to the challenging statement you made. One of the values for project managers is that they learn by experiencing. And your claim was experience may not matter anymore. The one thing that makes so many people senior over the smart youngsters is well, dude, I've seen this before. Yeah, that's the theory, or that's supposed to work. It's not really what's going to happen here. I've had people that tell me it's amazing. They'll tell me some outcome. I don't know. This is going to be 50% wrong. And I'm like, well, you don't really have good analysis for that. And then sure enough, somebody who's been around a while, they tend to be pretty accurate in those kind of predictions like that. So you've just said that what makes us get paid more and needed more, which could be a lot of it is about our experience that is somehow absorbed without getting it all written down, is not going to matter anymore. Talk to me about that.
Yeah.
That sounds threatening.
No, you know what? And it shouldn't. It shouldn't, really. It's a disaster. It's a recipe for disaster. I understand project managers who have many, many years of experience. Okay. But human is fallible. Yeah. I can ask the viewers here, tell me what you had for lunch three weeks ago on a Wednesday. You have no idea. I can ask an experienced project manager 10 years ago on a project, this risk came up. What did you do and was it successful or not? They might remember, they might not. So there's something in project management in AI called reinforcement learning. And reinforcement learning is a way to capture all of this data, capture the issues. What did you do? Was it successful or not? And I tell my students, be your own AI. When you start a project, when you're out there in the industry, start an Excel spreadsheet. And as you go through that project, an issue comes up, right? You go to the issues and problems meeting or whatever it is, the status meeting, write down that issue, what the project was, what the project conditions were, what action they decided to take, and was that successful or not. Capture the result. Capture that for the entire project. Next project, you go do the same thing. The next project, you go on, do the same thing. So now we may have, a person with 10 projects over, I don't know, maybe a couple of years. And think if we captured that data, for every project manager, for every project for the past 10 years, for 30 project managers, how much data we would have for AI to know what the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do was when an issue came up. But now, as to your point, now an organization hires a new project manager, they have 6 months experience, but they can take advantage, they can use AI to take advantage of all of that knowledge that's been captured, rather than relying on someone who's been there 30 years and is about to retire and really may not remember that much of what happened ages ago. I do value experience in project managers, but there's going to be a little bit of a shift here in that we have to capture this data and be really more realistic and use data decisions instead of intuition.
This does have me interested in the fact that a hiring process, or at least allocation of resources to a project, whether it's an outside hire or just the assignment of resources, assignment of people to do things, that resume is going to look differently now. Now it's not going to be, have you done a complex project that's such and such? I might want the someone who has signaled and shown success at being adept in the math, the stats, in the change management over that experience. And I think that has potential to be a little topsy-turvy for us. So the question may not be, are we going to lose our jobs? The answer could be, one of the things we've relied on most is going to knock out a bulwark for a lot of us. And so some of us may lose our jobs. Right?
Yeah. So
that's what I'm hearing here.
Here's the other thing that happens, okay? And I'll give you my pet peeve right off the bat, right? Here's my pet peeve. And that people say, AI cannot replace project managers because project managers have better soft skills. Are you kidding me? You know what my response is? I say, prove it. Prove it. So here's my response. There's a survey out there that says 64% of employees would rather work for a robot than their current manager.
Wow.
And the reason is because their current manager, they have their own agenda. They take credit for other people's work. They berate their employees. They have terrible communication skills. They give them bad performance reviews, and they don't really care. They have no emotional intelligence. Is that what we're saying? We want more project managers like that rather than AI? So the second reason is that...
That's intriguing. Hold on a second. I want to put a pin in that right now because we're in a space that I'm often dealing with. We are often saying we need you to have emotional intelligence. I just heard 64% of people would prefer someone who's giving them directions that has zero emotional intelligence. And the reason appears to be because so much of the emotional intelligence has a negative valence. I will take no EI, AQI over bad interaction.
Well, but here's the difference. Okay, here's the difference. Let me go through and then come back and ask this, because AI does offer you something. AI can give you an honest assessment of your performance and evaluate you in an unbiased way. Ooh, AI you what the best characteristics are for your career development in an unbiased way, rather than trying to keep you or get rid of you or whatever it might be. Talked about the first one is project managers are just not great at soft skills. That's why we have a bazillion courses on EQ and how to communicate and all this, because people are just bad at it. They weren't born that way. Okay. The second reason is bias. And this comes from, listen, I didn't make this up. This is True Talks. Daniel Kahneman, he won the Nobel Prize for doing study. His book, Think Slow, Think Fast, right? And he talked about it. Humans have this personal bias. It's the baggage that we bring with us whenever we communicate. So that's the second reason. AI doesn't have that personal bias. It may have some bias in the data, but it's nowhere near the personal bias that we have. And the third reason for me is the most significant. And here's how I want to explain this. When we as humans, when you, Kendall, when you talk to somebody, you talk to them from your perspective. Okay. Yep. You say, here's the message I want to communicate. And it's all wrapped up in your personality. It's wrapped up in your history. It's wrapped up in your experience. And then you communicate that message. It's based on you. When AI communicates, AI does an analysis on the person that they're trying to communicate with. What's the personality type? What would they be more receptive to? How could I phrase this so that they could be more receptive to it? What's their emotional, feeling right now? Are they upset? Are they happy? How's their work going? Are they doing well in their work? So AI communicates based on you, whereas humans based on the baggage that they carry with them. And I think that's the most important aspect to AI communication. And that's why I think...
Let me hit that for just a second. But hold it. Let me get on that for a second, because that sounds counterintuitive, but you just made a connection for me and maybe for listeners that want to hear this. In the thinking around performance reviews, performance management. So not just communication, but that explicit, painful, this is our official time that we're making sure we don't get sued and have the conversation. Because supposedly we're having the conversation all along, but when we're having that, whatever version of lies that your organization is having you guys tell each other. One of the things that's known by anybody who's ever dealt with this, and the psychologists that look at it, is this. The problem with a performance review is it's coming from someone with the bundle of who they are. That's what you were just getting at in the communication. The reviewer has their whole viewpoint. We're separate from whether they like you or not, just how they perceive the world. Then you hit the listener who has this bundle of who they are. They then react, and the reviewer now has to make this decision because now they're getting it coming back at them, and they get to reinterpret yet again. You literally have 3 interpretations in only 2 passes. And people's careers are on the line, are at stake, right? Yeah. And so this concept I'm finding really interesting from what you're saying is that it actually has the potential to suppress some of that, the bias, but not the bias even in the kind of a classic political sense, but just who we are as humans. Now, that sounds like that opens the door to some danger, but that's really, really interesting. Where I'm going with that strikes me as an important impact for the organizations that are hiring project managers. And I'll tie that back to one more thing you said that I'm seeing at the org level. You talked about the sharing of data across time and the elimination of experience for a PM because the AI holds that analysis of experience. One of the things organizations struggle with is knowledge management. That's one of our biggest things, because even the 30-year experienced PM leaves. All relationships are terminal. At some point they leave. projects downsize, people lose jobs, people change jobs, people pass on, people retire, etc. And one of the biggest problems is capturing all of that data. So this is an interesting implication for the organizations that need to focus on how do we transmit that forward. And I think that's where you're saying this has some tremendous power. So to me, two areas that you just talked about are have a high impact on organization. I have a follow-up on that, but what do you think about what I just said there? It's really an organizational problem, not a PM problem.
I agree with you to a certain extent. So I got a couple things to talk about here. First of all, is organizations have a massive amount of project history.
Yeah.
They have a massive amount of project data. And I go on and I do presentations and I ask them, I said, okay, you've got all this data. Now tell me what you're doing with it. Do you hear that silence?
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're doing with it. And I said, listen, that data history is gold. It's gold. And you're not digging for it. Come on, do some predictive analytics, do some data mining, get some valuable insights from that data that you're just kicking around on a server somewhere. Second things I want to talk about the organizations that I've worked with. So I worked with one organization. There's something called a data lake. And a data lake is where you can collect all your historical project data in one repository and then aim a ChatGPT engine at it and pull out intelligent information. So there is an organization I've worked with in Canada that is doing that now. The other thing is that I have talked to an organization again in Canada. They're called MELI. I told them it was a terrible name because it's MELI, but it's MELY.ai. And what they do is they're working with construction companies and taking their project management data. They built interfaces. So they have an interface to Jira. They have an interface to MS Project. They have an interface to Primavera. And instead of a company trying to manage all this on themselves, they can just take all your existing data from wherever it is and give you that repository to do insights on. How do you like that? You
just preempted one of my questions. I want to ask you anyway. You mentioned Excel spreadsheet earlier. One of the questions is, how do you collect all this data everyone needs? And I guess however we always do it, but is there some new enhanced way to do that because of these tools? I think you just gave me one. You can plug them right into some of these tools we use to manage that data.
In. Yeah, building interfaces is very easy. They've got it.
So the interface with that and with our financials and books and whatever the risk management team at the corporate level is doing, I mean, we could literally integrate all of it then.
You know, you take
or make it available in the lake, I should say.
You have to figure out how to format it, because anybody who's done a data migration project knows data needs to be structured. Two data fields in the same thing. There's got a blank data field that doesn't work. So you have to have structured data. But again, I think the project manager has a role to play in that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. From the structuring side.
Because again, who's going to know about project management data? Someone with all that knowledge of specific language that we use. We use things like the critical path and earned value management that other people have no clue what we're talking about.
So, one of the questions that's come up recently with the chat system or the chat concepts, not so much about the interface, but about what they pull out. We talked about bias, and it only knows what it can know. It's not inventing new things. I just heard someone make a great reference the other day on a different podcast about if you ask it 2 + 2, it's telling you that most people say 4, but it's actually not calculating. Your Excel calculates something. And so there's some inherent weakness in some of this. One of the things we've heard, though, is the IP from Stephen King to others who are talking about you're using stuff that I've written that I kind of own. What will happen when we are looking across time and across companies? As project managers move between companies or companies move things around, it seems to me like the protection of the original source of the data may be difficult, particularly across time. Nobody will remember where it came from. Is it?
Yeah.
So what do we need to consider in this space?
Yeah, you're getting into some of the ethical issues, but I think your ethical issues are around. I think the ethical issues around data management. So I want to set aside the ChatGPT issue, because the ChatGPT looks the world. whereas that's not really the way we're doing it in project management. So I have up and I've downloaded an API called Langchain, Langchain.
Hold it. You have to repeat that. Hold it. You skipped there. You downloaded an app called
Langchain, Langchain. And what it allows you to do is basically have a ChatGPT or a large language model on your own computer or your server and aim it at your organization's data. And so you don't have to worry about, you're using somebody else's data or what's the IP. It's your data. Now, if somehow you want more data, if you're collaborating, and I think especially small organizations are going to need more data, they need to collaborate with other small organizations. So just do a data sharing arrangement, and put those data security issues and ethical issues, IP security issues around your collaboration agreement. So that's for the lawyers to sort out. I don't think there's a real issue there. I think if the organization aims it at their own data, then there's no issue.
You wrote a third book that I thought was interesting around this idea, the self-driving project. You just published that one actually in the middle of COVID here. Essentially how we can do everything in a project management space without a PM. So you've literally called it out that I don't know if you came to the conclusion that you could, but you certainly asked the question, how could we? Would it be possible to do it? What is it that you're discovering from that perspective? Because it sounds like you were asking the question pretty early, even without all the tools being fully developed at that time, or even as we continue to grow. Can we do everything in a project management without a project manager? You've told me how we can collaborate, but you haven't told me how I could actually get away with not having a PM to begin with.
So the tool
actually, let me change this question slightly. Hold it. I'm going to give you some red meat on this. You gave me an interesting statistic. Project managers on their own, 92% successful. AI on its own, 94%. Combined collaborative, 97%, 98%. Was something earlier you reflected.
That was the collaboration statistic. So yes, there was a study out of, I think it was University of Southern California. And what they said was they were doing MRI brain scans. And MRI brain scans looking for people who had a stroke. And it's very serious, right? Because depending on the diagnosis, they're either going to put them on medication or get a saw and cut open their skull. So you really want to make a good decision. And the technicians, the clinicians who looked at the results, they were accurate 90 to 91% of the time. Then what they did, the University of Southern California gathered, they had a machine learning tool using supervised learning. So they took MRI brain scans from hospitals all around the United States and used this tool. And what they would do is they trained it on what a stroke looked like and what a stroke didn't look like. Then they were fed these new images. The AI tool was accurate 94, 95% of the time. So already, for those who are AI skeptics, I would rather use AI. Just saying now, if I had an MRI image, I would rather go with the AI tool. But what I found out is that if the clinician and the AI tool collaborated, then the accuracy rate went up to 97, 98%. So this means that the clinician looking at, I don't like that result, let's run it again, or the AI tool needed more data, what happened here? So they worked together. And that is what I think we have to do as project managers, especially at the beginning. Now, you mentioned my book, The Self-Driving Project. What I propose there is an AI project agent. And you think of the project agent as going through a maze. And inside that maze are all the project aspects. You could call them knowledge areas or whatever it is, stakeholder management, risk. And as the agent goes through the maze, it decides how to address every one of those situations. Mm-hmm. But first of all, the project manager, or the project agent is proactive. So how are we supposed to be proactive on projects? Let's make sure the scope document is accurate before we begin.
Right.
And there are tools to do that. Right at the beginning. Let's make sure the schedule is accurate. Let's make sure the budget is accurate. Let's look at stakeholder communications. Do we have a good communication plan? Do we have a good risk plan? And the problem that we have now, and I don't know about you, but I've had stakeholders who are like this. I want to see a shovel in the ground. what tasks are you working on? No, I'm just doing the planning stage. If you look at PMBOK, if you look at project management, isn't planning one of the most important aspects to project management?
Yeah.
And you're under all this pressure to get going, want to see results. So what happens with AI tools is now you can be proactive, because a 300-page scope document doesn't take a week to review. If you use an AI tool, it can take 2 days, and it will tell you all the errors and omissions that it's discovered, and you go back and fix them.
So that's interesting. It can speed the process of our cycle time within the projects for the project management tasks themselves. Because I think one of the challenges is reviewing MRIs, for example, may not be the best example in comparison. Although we have knowledge that the chess world, for example, the combined AI and chess master is a stronger team than either of the other in isolation. Where I was coming from is the good old grungy capitalist argument, though. If I can get 92% with a project manager with all their costs and everything, and I can get 94%, I may not get 97% accuracy, but I'll take 94 for a one-time purchase over a slew of labor. I'm asking the question from a labor perspective. Now, one of our questioners came in with one here from our production team, said, wait a second, isn't a lot of project management about relationships, as in knowing who has what and who can be moral suaded to do something? So said another way, I may use an AI, but what if my supplier isn't? Or do I just need to connect my two AIs together, his and mine? What's the role of relationship?
I've come up with this as well. That's part of the soft skills. I didn't get into the whole soft skills. I could do a 4-hour discussion on it. And so my response to that, you want to look at your stakeholder. You want to look at the relationship. You want to see what the stakeholder is going to do to you. My response is, how many muscles in the human face?
Lots.
There's 42. There's 42. Okay. So there's 42 muscles in the human face. And there is an app out there. I've seen it. It's called Receptivity. There's 2 of them. And the other one's called Affectiva. And what they do is they've got an app on their phone, and you put it up to a human face, and it shows you their emotional feelings at that moment. Now, I just told you there's 42 muscles in the human face. Based on what those muscles are doing, you should be able to tell what that person is thinking. As a matter of fact, that's what it does. This person is happy. This person is sad. This person is angry. And so that app is out there now. We can use that app when we're discussing with a stakeholder. How do you feel about this? For example, agile projects, right? I want to get some feedback. I want to get feedback. Voice of the customer. How do you feel about this? I can use this app to get a very, very accurate response. Now, can a human do that? We're not very good at it. It gets back to the 64%. I'd rather work for a robot. The reason is because some person comes into work. They got a frown on their face. And the project manager goes over and says, okay, well, here's what I want you to do today, and gives them 10 tasks, not realizing that person, perhaps their child has just gone off to the hospital, and they're worried about, can they get their work done to go visit them after work? And hopefully the doctors are going to, provide some good medication. And what does a project manager do? Just runs in there and says, hey, here, I need this done right now. Listen, as project managers, we don't know what those 42 muscles are. We don't know whether they're loose or tight, and depending on whether they're stretched or tight, that determines how a person is feeling. And
Paul, you're going to get me replaced. I just gave a lesson, or part of a lesson included the ladder of inference, which is exactly that problem where we observed information, and what happens is our brain escalates through what I think I'm observing and what that means. I think you're hitting into the psychology of it all. And the question becomes, it's almost like AI flattens the playing field, which is good for biases and possibly just makes a larger demand on more AI, which takes me to my last major question here. So as a project manager, I might have a tool that's co-piloting with me, or a partner in the chair with me as PM. I love the point there, by the way, about improving the planning speed, because that's where we face political pressure. I mean, you really hit it. That solves a business problem for the project manager. not the project's business
Yes.
problem, but my business problem, which is stakeholders won't leave me alone long enough to tell them what we found out, what we need to do next. So I think that's really interesting that you said that. When the different parts of projects, and recognizing that there are many kinds of projects in the world, are themselves the skilled technicians, the skilled people that are on our teams, are also co-piloting with AI. Not on project management tasks, but on the construction design, on the software development, on the charity drive that they have to assemble and put together and identify all the stakeholders, whatever the project is that people are addressing here, R&D even. What's going to happen with the collision of AIs? What is that? Does that bring complexity? Is that your fourth book? Like, what happens when everyone's AI is engaged? Because I'm seeing a skein here of the interactions between them that I can't wrap my mind around. Or is there an interaction?
That's a great question, and thanks for the opportunity to write another book.
Yeah, well, our audience doesn't know the way you did this is you wrote a book. Hold on a second. You wrote a book, found a chapter you wanted to do more on. That became the next book. Found another chapter in that one you wanted to do more. That became the next book. So here we are. What happens when the project manager gets mostly replaced with AI or gets a co-pilot with AI? The project management techniques do. And they are running into the team all has their own specialty co-pilots.
Well, I think that's a great opportunity for project management. I don't think there's a conflict. I think there's an intertwining of great results. For example, as the project team uses their AI tools to complete their tasks, the AI can update the project status on a more of a real-time basis. I think that can be fed. As a matter of fact, there is a tool now that kind of does that. It's out of France. It's an app on a phone, and the construction workers take this app out of the field, and they do things like take a photograph of the how far along the building is, and it will instantly say, here's your status, you're 40% complete, 30% complete. And it also talks about suppliers. My supplier is late, or here's a supplier. And what happens is that status, that information goes right back immediately to the project status, to the project manager, and they know right away. Now, whether they're going to put that in their weekly or monthly status report, that's a separate issue. But I see an integration of the AI tools so that hopefully it works in conjunction with the project management AI tools. I think it's a great opportunity.
Are we going to need as many project managers? Or are we just going to get to do more projects now?
Both. So here's what's happening in our world. So I think organizations will see that have AI, we can one project manager manage more projects at the same time, right? So that's an opportunity. Listen, there's 16.5 million project managers in the world, and it's growing. So one opportunity is to do more projects. The other issue that we're facing is projects are getting more difficult. Yeah. And the evidence is there are things like environmental aspects to projects that we never really considered before. You know, is this project going to cause an environmental impact? Do I have to have people dig down and look for artifacts, ancient artifacts on it? What is the watershed impact? There's all sorts of impacts from an environmental perspective. There are regulations and policies around how we have to implement things is becoming more complex. There's just so much complex projects, and there's so much in terms of environmental skills, abilities of workers, ethical considerations. I think that these tools can help project managers deliver projects in a timely manner, and not do that constant over schedule, over.
Yeah,
budget.
You seem to be highlighting something there that seems really. It sounds like you're doing highlighting something there that seems really important to me, which is we really want to make sure our projects provide value. That's been a focus of a lot of the conversations I've had with other people on this show and on my podcast, for example.
Absolutely.
But you're suggesting something else. The AI isn't driving that as much as we said this was the plan, and now we know if that plan is working or not and how we can improve the plan and therefore the execution of the plan in the future. There's a certain sense of it's like, I'm not going to get into the value in the selection, although it'd be interesting to have it in project selection, wouldn't it? But it's more about saying we will make sure it happens.
hang on, I'm doing that. So I currently have a client in, where is he? He's in Spain, and that's exactly what he's doing. He's going into a large organization, a portfolio of 100 projects, and he's saying, Paul, how can I assess which of these projects giving me the most value? Because what my client wants to do, prioritize the projects that are giving me the most value, and perhaps cancel the projects that are giving me the least value. And this predictor tool that I talked about that can forecast and predict exactly what it can do. It can tell you which projects are going to give you the value and which projects are getting lost in the value statement since they've started implementing that project.
I'm hearing AI keeps us honest. It's quite possible that the tools we would use drives a certain level of it just is what it is. And then to the extent that it's accurate is on us with our data, but there's a certain sense it keeps us honest. So my last question is this. Imagine a world where you wanted to replace yourself as a PM. What would we as PMs have to do to allow it to replace us? On what kind of project? What are the characteristics that would allow it to replace our work?
Read my book, Self-Driving Project.
There we go. Go find the Self-Driving Project published in 2021. And is it on Amazon?
Yes, it is. The project manager has to be proactive. The agent has to be proactive. The agent has to form everything. The project has to be a project that, history of being successful. So, I think this is going to happen. I don't think it's going to be in the near future, but I think it will happen in our history, right? Well, not my lifetime, but maybe your lifetime. So it's going to happen. And I think it's about going through all of the aspects of a project. And when we talk about projects, we say projects are unique. No, they're not unique. There's a unique aspect to a project, right? Most of the project is the same as another project. I'm building a bridge over the river. Have you built a bridge before? Oh, yes, but this river is wider. Okay, great. So the unique aspect. I think the first areas where AI is going to take over a project manager completely is where most of the project is similar and there's only a unique aspect to it. And then AI will investigate that unique aspect and find a way to do it. That's where I think I think this is going to be for construction projects. I think it's going to be for agile projects, especially, which we vote too much. And I think it's going to be pharmaceutical projects. So can I talk about agile for just 1 minute?
You got 1 minute. Ready, set, go.
People tell me that you can't use agile. You can't use AI in agile. Not true. There are tools now that will go over your agile user stories, find errors and omissions. You can predict success of your sprint. People tell me you can't use agile because you can't forecast the future. Of course you can forecast the future. It's raining outside. You go outside, what's going to happen? I can forecast what's going to happen. So AI is just much better at forecasting the future than humans are.
Wow. So plumbing all those user stories, AI is particularly good at moving through all that data. So actually anything where you have a lot of something, you're going to see some advantage. Well, listen here, Paul, thank you for taking the time to prep with us and for taking the time to be on the call here tonight. I enjoyed the back and forth on it, and it's got me pondering about a number of things. I feel like I need to make a leapfrog forward in my thinking about some of this AI. Audience, now that you've listened, you got to fill out the survey that you're going to get so that you can actually go and get your PDU, which there'll be information about that coming up here shortly. And then we all know that when everything goes well, all teams love each other. But what happens when it goes not well, when there's a technical difficulty? Well, if you're lucky, you've got Dan, the man with the staying power. And that is a pun because it's Dan Stay. And he's the guy that still helped us put this together. And we are here ready to get this out on YouTube here shortly. So thank you, Dan. And back over to you, Beth.
Thanks, Kendall. I really enjoyed the thought-provoking discussion about the potential role, current and future, of AI in project management. Along with the rest of the True Talks team, I do want to apologize to those of you who may have tuned in for the live broadcast and found that there wasn't one tonight. It was beyond our control, and we are very glad to have been able to have this conversation anyway. It was, I thought, very interesting, and hopefully you enjoyed watching the recording and perhaps can comment. I'm not sure, Dan, are they allowed to comment on the YouTube, or Harry on the YouTube? If you can comment on the YouTube video, maybe that's where you can have the dialogue with your questions and your thoughts about what you heard here tonight. Thank you again for joining us. It looks like Kendall might have another comment. What was that?
Oh, I was going to say, actually, the comment section would be really good to know, based on what we heard, what should we be asking next? What are the next guests? So thank you for that.
Right. We're here to serve. We're always interested in knowing what is of most concern or interest to our audience. So let us know. And we'll see you next time on True Talks Live. Thank you.